Hello, everyone, and welcome back to today's final session on today's Training Industry Learning Tech Showcase Content Creation Authoring Tools, sponsored by Camtasia, Echo 360, and ELB Learning. So again, I'm Liz Spate, the Events Marketing Specialist here at Training Industry, and I'm thrilled to have you with us here today. Before we get started, again, I would like to quickly go over a few housekeeping items to help you interact with our speakers and get the most out of today's session. So again, feel free to use that chat window for any comments to our speakers and submit those questions in the Q&A panel. So we will be kind of having a Q&A throughout and at the end of today's session. So please do not hesitate to plug those questions throughout. If we don't get to your question, the Echo 360 team will reach out accordingly. So no worries there. And once this session ends, a brief survey will appear in your browser. Please take a moment to share your feedback on the session and our speakers. And all of our sessions are being recorded and archived on trainingindustry.com. And you will receive a follow-up email from us that will include a link to the on-demand program for you to share with your team. Now, if this is your first training industry event, we would love to welcome you. We exist to make connections among learning and development professionals, and we offer tons of resources to support your role in L&D, like live events like today's showcase, as well as through articles on our website, our magazine, conferences, research reports, our membership, and our podcast. We would also love to hear about what you've learned from today's session on social media, so please follow us on any platform so we can continue the conversation. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our final speakers today. We have Blake Hudlin, the Global Director of Sales Enablement and Customer Onboarding at Echo 360. And then we have Josh McCombs, Product Manager at Echo 360. So with that, gentlemen, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. So we are going to start our screen share shortly and get rolling. All right, welcome everybody. Super excited to get started today. We're going to talk a little bit about SOPs and how we can turn those into trusted learning and knowledge content. So once again, my name is Blake, and I've also got Josh with me today as my esteemed colleague who will go through a little bit of some of the new functionality that we have today that the product team is developing. But before I get started, I really wanted to start with a dad joke because we were just talking about it backstage. So I'm going to ask you all, why did the content author bring a ladder to work? Because they heard the course needed to be taken to the next level. All right, boom. Sorry about that. Just had to get one in. Anyway, so yeah, let's get going. One of the things that we all know and love with content authoring is that we are trying to create a single source of truth. And as you probably see, there are a lot of amazing tools out there today to create incredibly fast content, but unfortunately, they're not always reliable. And so we're going to actually talk about something different today. And that's how you can make sure that your content is actually right and correct and is the operational workflow of truth that you have within the organization. And so we have this concept here at Echo, and we call it operational truth because we really want our authoring workflow to reflect the human element, right? We call it the human in the loop. Unfortunately, today there's a lot of things being developed that may not actually involve humans, and we want those people to be involved because they ultimately understand and know what's right and wrong. So we're going to pump up the participation in this session. And so what I want you all to do right away is answer a poll for me. So how many versions of the right way exist in your company? In other words, how many content applications in your organization hold sources of truth that you or your team might rely on? Is it one? Is it two or three? Is it four or five? Or the dreaded 5+? Seeing a lot of stuff coming in at 4, 5, or 5+, which doesn't surprise me. As you probably all know and love, there's just lots of places to put stuff and lots of places to ask for things. As you see on the screen here, it could be in your learning management system. We actually use Slack here, so we have a lot of stuff in Slack messages. There's a SharePoint, maybe even a OneDrive with a lot of Word and PDF files. So lots of places for content. And then, of course, AI is in the mix, also creating that content. So yeah, just a lot of different places where content can be produced, stored, and accessed across the knowledge base of the organization. All right, so let's just stop the poll and we'll move forward to the next slide. So like I had mentioned, AI has made it incredibly easy to create content, but it's also made it incredibly easy to create conflicting content. And as you know, when content gets defined and your business operates, it can also make it, unfortunately, a little bit inefficient with confusion, um, anything from duplication of records, and also creating a lot of risk. So we want that to ultimately create a lot of not create a lot of difficulty within the organization. And so that is the name of the game here, is that we are trying to solve this content creation problem by having a single source of truth. And so the real challenge in the organization is not really how fast you can create content. It's whether your organization trusts what's being used and accessing it when the time is right. So when it comes to SOPs, processes, operations material that are mostly correct, that's really not good enough. Learners have, I call it the 15-second rule. They have about 15 seconds to get content that they need to answer a question or solve a problem. And if they don't trust the speed and the accuracy of that content and the workflow to get to that content in your library, they're not always going to come back the next time. They're just going to ask a colleague or make something up or just do what they've always been done. And that's really not what we want. We want that content creation process to reflect governance. And unfortunately, what we've seen a lot of times is that there's not always that defined truth within the organization. So, like I said, there could be a lot more sources. Obviously, content creation with AI makes things faster and makes things automated, but it doesn't always create that governance layer that we need. So we want that one source. We want approved SOPs to be defining our truth. And so one of the things that we'll actually show a lot of times with the EchoInk workflow process is the ability for us to take all those disparate forms of content, whether it's a PDF file, a Word document, videos that we produce, tables that we create, AI intelligence that we might have generated, and how do we structure it in EchoInk habitat? And so we want to structure that content in a way that's modern, that's friendly, that's interactive. We also want to collaborate on that content so that we can make sure that it's right. We want to make sure that there's a review and approval process. And we also want to check the versions, right? To make sure if we go back to April of last year, what did that version look like when the person was viewing that content? And ultimately, all that content after the approval process gets published into what we call an Inkdoc. And that Inkdoc is approved. It's got a version that is only the source of truth that everybody gets to see. And then from that, we can then distribute out that content into our own application where we have our own learning library and training management system. Or if you've got your own training system, your own LMS, you can put it in that. You can share it in your SharePoint. You can put it into Confluence or another AI agent to see later, or even just on your mobile device. And so that's another thing that we'll talk about is being able to access that really at the moment of need. And so that mobile experience is important as well because those frontline workers, if they happen to be out in the field, need to see that content as well. All right. So without further ado, let's get into our demonstration. So we're going to show you how that truth is created, and we'll start out. Actually, I have to kill my PowerPoint for a second and show you what we see when we're first starting to author in the EchoInk Habitat system. So, quick walkthrough. We're in Habitat right now, which is our authoring platform. As an administrator or a content author, I will seek projects that I'm working on. I can scroll through those projects and I can delegate who gets responsibility to those. We don't get into that much detail just at the very beginning, but we'll just start out in one of these documents like the Standard Operating Procedures Guide. So we'll click on that document. As you probably will expect, we can create new projects with templates. So more often than not, what we'll see is a lot of content authors will start out with certain templates that they'd like to use. That way, all the patterns that they build, all the different guides in the formatting and color scheme of that document is actually predefined. But what you can see here is a lot of these already set up in our pattern drawer. And so if I wanted to drag and drop any of these elements, I can do that quite quickly. As you can probably imagine, there's just a number of different patterns already out of the box that I can use to build my content. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new page at the beginning of this document, and we'll just title it with the image panel header, and we'll call this program introduction, put in some sample content. Right? And then we can go ahead and drag and drop any other content elements that we want to produce in here. So Really, it does allow for any content author to democratize some of this content authoring to certain subject matter experts, for example, that are more inclined to have that subject matter information. So if I'm creating sanitization guides or other different things, obviously people can work with me on that content together. Any type of change that I make is going to have a page activity history. So if I'm adding in tables or other different elements or deleting certain things, it's actually going to be tracking all those page changes. And so at a glance, if Josh came in here tomorrow and wanted to see a difference in the versions that I just created versus the one that he was working on, he'd be able to see that really quickly here with, strike throughs on the things that are deleted and highlighting in green things that have been added. So not only can we compare versions to the last version, but really any version in time that document's been created or that page has been edited, and restore those at any time I need to. Ultimately, when I'm working in the content, I can add these interactive elements that we know and love here at EchoInk to make that content more fun and engaging for those learners. And so if I go down here on the bottom, we have things called widgets, right? Like a timeline widget that they can swipe through, annotated image with pop tips, a quiz that you might want to create with an assessment widget. So all I have to do is just grab that widget, drag it in. You can see a little bar that's showing me where it's going to go. And then once I let it go, I've got a little edit box that makes it really easy for me to add my little knowledge check. So I add in my question, answer one, wrong answer here. I always like to put in the wrong answer because then I know in demos that I'm clicking on the right thing. So we'll just hit save, and now we've created a quiz. So super easy for us to create these different content elements, whether they're interactive or in this case, just a static picture or whatnot, and then have those learners, when they're in that content, interact with them, and we can track obviously things like a quiz and what they answered in it. So once again, once I've created some content and I want to make those changes public, I can go ahead and publish that out. But before I do that, I actually want to make sure that maybe Josh or somebody else has contributed to some of this content. So really easily, I can highlight some of that content. And then on the right of my little WYSIWYG bar, I've got a little add comment box. And I can go in here and say, hey, Josh, can you edit this section? And then I can go ahead and assign that to him. Now, the way that the assignment process works ultimately is once I hit the save button, Josh now gets an email notification. He can actually see on the top here that there's a notification directly in the comments box to him. On the top, this little dash will turn into a 1. He can then reply back to me. We can have a conversation on it. Once we've decided that it's fixed, or maybe we're punting it over to somebody else, we can change that status as well. Any of the comments have a little spaghetti noodle right attached to that particular area that we're talking about, just making it super clear for everybody involved exactly what needs to be edited and how that might be changed. So that conversation or dialogue that we're having can span across the whole document as we're working on it. And obviously, as we create new updates to those pages, for example, like maybe a change to the title of the page, I can go ahead and do that and publish out my new changes. So let's just rename this to introduction. Can't spell today. There we go. And we'll save it. And we'll decide now who's going to be a part of the audience that we're going to be distributing out to. So we can go over here to document audience and decide on who gets to see it. Now, for the most part, this is really subject to your organization and how you want to set up permissioning. But we can ultimately create as many different types of audiences in advance that we might want. For example, maybe only the general managers. This is a SOP guide for only manager type positions. So we can just change that audience at a glance here. The way I came up with these audiences is based on different fields or attributes that we have in the system. And so ultimately, we'll connect with a lot of other HRIS or systems of record that have things like job title already built into that learner's profile. And so we can say, hey, let's use job title and general manager or other different types of titles in addition to that for our management team to only see this document versus everybody. So real easy in the document audience to just define all that right away at a glance. I'm going to keep it on everybody though. We don't really need to change any of that for our demo. The other thing that's really nice that we can also do is publish history. So we can see all the different changes that have been made over time with this document, and we can actually generate exports to send over to our legal team if we need that as well. So really easy for everybody to be on the same page for what version that particular document's been published, who actually was responsible for hitting that magic publish button, and then obviously if we wanted to export that into a PDF file to send over to legal or somebody else that needs to see it, maybe marketing, we can do that really quickly as well. So with that being said, I'm just going to go up to the top, hit my publish button, and we're going to set that publish process in motion. So the way that we view our content, so I'm going to actually jump over to our learning view. So this is really where everybody gets to see our content. And so they're going to see this in a number of different ways. And the really nice thing about the EchoInk environment is that we're seeing that single source of truth in a number of different genres, right? We're seeing it in a knowledge library. So I can go into this knowledge library and see all the different pieces of content that I have available to me. And just like if I want to go into that standard operating procedures guide, I can just click on it and organically jump into that page or wherever I need to go. That being said, I can go into that document, I can navigate around with it. As you can see here with the left-hand navigation of the table of contents, I can search across that document, all those fun things right away once I'm in the document. If I see something that I really like, I can go ahead and tag it or add my own comments to it. So I can highlight this or add my own personal notes, right? And save that in my notebook. And that's going to live with me regardless of which device I'm looking at it with. If I go back to library and I want to sequence this document into, in this case, a learning path or a training guide, I can go up to the training tab and I can actually take all this content into a training course, right? So if I'm running through a course step by step, like how to close the store, I can go to course store closing procedures, and any number of course steps that I have in here could include that content that I've authored. So as you can see, how to close and lock the front door just happens to be a sample Inkdoc maybe for that first step that I might need to take. So this is going to load up that store layout, intro, or whatever the plan is that I need to do in order to set up that store. Once I'm finished viewing that, I can mark that as complete either by clicking on the top or scrolling all the way through it. I can incorporate physical activities with my manager if I need to, or even off-the-shelf content that I might have purchased or built from another tool. So we can support external content if you happen to build it in Articulate or some other tool in a SCORM-based file. You can just upload that as also a course step that they can take. So that same content that I publish always shows the latest version in the course steps area, which is really important because later on, obviously I'll be in a position where I'm going to be updating this content. I don't necessarily have to republish the whole course again just because I made a typo on one particular document or one page. All that course content is automatically built into the trainings. And then that, like I said, they're just going to view when they have the right step to see. If I go up to manage teams though, I can also have visibility into all the rest of my trainer or my trainees steps that they have or haven't completed. So Hector or Harriet, how far have they gotten in their training? What steps have they completed or not completed? All that's visible to me as a learner, or in this case, as a manager for those learners. So we call it learning pathways. It's just a really great way that we can sequence a lot of that training content or library content for them in a way, maybe for their first week or for an initiative that we have available. The last step that I'm going to show you here is the home tab. The home tab is really where I can see all my courses at a glance, see what contents may be featured that I want to showcase for others, and then that's all going to be in one place for my learner to see at once. So really a great way for me to see all of it as I'm going through for the first time as a learner. Any of the courses that I've been assigned, any changes to content that I might want to have everybody be aware of, all that can be shown here. So what about in a mobile environment? Well, here is my iPad and the same environment here from what you've seen on my desktop view. And my iPad environment, like I said, is an app, so I can just jump into that app here. Excuse me, and see my learning library or the training area or any place that I might want. But more or less, what ends up happening a lot of times with the mobile app is that I'm on the floor, right? I'm walking around. I need to get an answer solved or a question answered or a problem solved. So I'm actually going to use Siri to help me with that search. Hey Siri, search EchoInk. How to clean the meat grinder. So it's going to jump into that first that first result, and look at that. I just got into the meat grinder use and sanitation job aid. And as I'm using that meat grinder for the first time, I don't want to cut off my hand or do anything bad, so I'm going to walk through that step-by-step guide, whether it might include, in this case, some imagery or videos that I need to watch on how to do that particular proper procedure. So all that's going to be at a glance for me at that mobile environment that I can scroll through right away. So once again, we're just basically making this as easy as possible for those learners to get to that authored content that we've built. So with that being said, I'm going to take a minute to pause and transition over to my colleague Josh, who's going to talk a little bit about what's new with EchoInk. So I'm going to stop my screen share. Josh, why don't you take it away with some of the new stuff that we're building over here at EchoInk?
Awesome. Thanks, Blake. That was a great overview. All right. So I'm going to spotlight just real quick. So I'm product manager for Echo Inc. So I'm always kind of working on the latest functionality that we're bringing into the platform. So I have a few features that I want to spotlight for you today that are really built to enable teams to handle situations that are both urgent and also high risk. So we really can speed up content development and approvals and updates so that you can deliver critical information to your employees and your learners, all while you still maintain kind of complete accuracy and top-down control. So have a little scenario. So imagine you're responsible for operational content at a company with hundreds or thousands of locations throughout the world, like a global restaurant, grocery, or retail chain. Or you just have tens of thousands of employees out in the field at healthcare facilities or manufacturing sites or regional insurance offices. And today you receive a critical update. It might be tied to a new health regulation, a recent audit finding, or maybe an internal incident that requires immediate action. All of that information needs to go out to all of your employees and all of your locations by the end of the day because it affects the health and safety of your employees or customers. So for a restaurant or grocery store, that might affect food safety and compliance, or for healthcare workers, it may affect patient safety. So it all starts with a Word doc that you receive from your manager. So we're going to bring that Word doc into the Echo Inc. authoring environment. So I'm going to click here and bring that Word file in. And while that's importing, I'm going to show you what that Word doc looks like. So even though the content itself is important and critical, it's also really hastily assembled. It does not follow your brand guidelines. It's poorly formatted, inconsistent, and just like generally not ready for frontline employees. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hop back over to Habitat. Give me 1 second to switch my screen over here. There we go. All right, so I have that new Word doc that I've just brought in. And so you'll notice that a few things happen automatically here. So first, the content is mapped into structured, reusable components. That's what Blake was showing you in the pattern drawer here. That means under the hood, it's HTML and CSS, which is the technology that powers all content on the web. You're no longer locked into a proprietary format like a Word doc or a PDF doc. This is all web standard content. It also inherits the brand styling that you have in your template. So all the fonts, the colors, the logo, and any other branding elements are automatically brought into that content. It's also mobile optimized to work on any device. So Blake showed this earlier, but that same, fixed kind of layout Word doc is now a totally reflowable, responsive document that looks great on a mobile device as well. Also, really importantly, it's accessible, and that means that it's ready for use with screen readers and other assistive technologies. And then finally, all of that content is also fully searchable by your employees or learners. So down to, specific lines of text in here, specific, steps that a user needs to take, all of that content, you can put it in the search, a learner can put it in the search bar inside of Echo Inc. and get directly to that piece of content. So you think about that, like all those pieces, what used to take hours or even days of manual rework is now done in seconds. And so then from here, make this a little bit bigger. The author can really quickly kind of improve the clarity and usability of the document. So I could take this table here and I'm going to could add like a header row to it. I could change the color of it if I want to, like that. I could go down to this list here and make this a little more brand appropriate. So I'll switch to this counter circle list. I'll change the color to our company green color. And I can go down. Let's make this little note here. This should be important. So I'll click, we'll make this an important note here. And we'll also make that be our brand green there. And then like Blake mentioned, oh yeah, I could also let's make this image a little less obtrusive. It's kind of taking up a lot of space. So I'll make it a circle and then let's make it a fourth width and we'll kind of float it off to the right here. Maybe we'll let's bring it up in line with this table right here. Just like that. And then like Blake mentioned, you can also enhance that content. So you could quickly add a video or a flashcard widget or an assessment directly into this content. So instead of a static document, this now becomes a guided, actionable experience. So thinking about your audience, a store associate who's checking cleaning steps on their phone or a restaurant manager verifying a sanitation checklist during a rush, that content isn't just cleaned up, it's now usable in the flow of work. Now, here's where things get more complex. So this isn't a small document. It's hundreds of pages, multiple contributors, and updates coming in constantly. So the author really needs confidence that everything is accurate before publishing. So if an RSA missed, a restaurant could fail an inspection, or your grocery store could risk contamination. So the author needs to move fast, but like Blake mentioned, not at the expense of accuracy. So they open up track changes. So with track changes, I can now see throughout the whole document what changed when and who made the update, where the updates occurred across the document, and which edits require approval. So I actually see the page that Blake just added, that shows up in red here, that there's a new piece of content here. From here, I can accept critical updates. So in this case, this one's been flagged, so I can accept this or I can reject it. If I reject it, it's going to roll back that particular update that was made on the page to the previous version. And I can really just ensure that nothing slips through. So this is really important in industries where your compliance is audited and your mistakes have real consequences. So then we can make things even more impactful for the end user. So we just released a new set of AI-powered features, AskEcho Inc. and summaries and FAQs. So now authors can add summaries and frequently asked questions to documents. As Blake showed you earlier, learners can now access these summaries and FAQs by clicking or tapping on a document title in the library. And then it gives readers multiple ways to quickly learn about what each document is for. Authors can also use AskEcho Inc. to automatically recommend summaries and FAQs based on the latest published version of a document. And that's really useful since authors might have hundreds of documents that they're managing and updating. So when I go to publish, you'll see an option here to automatically generate a document and summary. So I can toggle that on. You even see there was a warning here saying, okay, that was last generated 1 hour and 5 minutes ago as well. So what that's going to do is the system's going to analyze the document. It's going to generate a clear summary, including any recent changes that you've added to the document, and it's going to create FAQs based on likely questions. So I'm going to pop over to that screen here. Here we go. So up here, I have maybe this is the summary that I initially created for the document, but now you'll see I've got this more robust summary of the entire document. Maybe a lot of content's been added in over the last few months. So I can copy that content to the clipboard, I can paste it in, and then I can go in and I can make edits. So let's say, actually, this part, that the AI summary wasn't quite what I was going for here, or I didn't think it was super relevant. I can also go in and add additional content to those summaries. And I can do the same thing here with FAQs. So you'll see I've actually have 10 FAQs that have been generated. Here's one, what is the purpose of a daily store walk? So I think that one's really useful for my readers to have access to. Maybe what should team members look for during a store walk? Let's add that in. I could even add in my own FAQs. Maybe I have specific things that I want to make sure that learners have access to. So all of that's under your control. You can decide whether to use the recommended summary and FAQs, or you make edits as needed. And this makes it easy for authors to add these helpful resources to their entire library of documents, all while maintaining exact control over the wording of each piece here. So Then once we publish, like Blake mentioned earlier, I'll go ahead and save that. Employees and learners will automatically see those updates in their personal content libraries and any assigned courses where the content's embedded. And you can compare that to the traditional process using separate tools for operational content, course authoring, and course assignments via the LMS. The update happens in Word, you upload to a content management system, you share it with the L&D team, you rebuild the course in a course authoring tool, then you export it as SCORM, you upload it to the LMS, you reassign the course. That process can take hours or days. It introduces risk and it often really delays critical information. So EchoInk removes all of that friction by combining the operational content and course authoring, content management, delivery, and reporting all inside of one platform. So in just a few minutes, the author was able to take a messy document, turn it into a structured, branded, mobile-ready content, validate every change with confidence, and then enhance it with AI-generated summaries and FAQs and get it out into the hands of your employees, all without rebuilding, reassigning, or slowing down. So that's what EchoInk enables. I'm going to turn it over to Blake to wrap things up for us.
All right. Yeah, we just have another minute or so. So we did have a multitude of different questions popping in the chat. Yeah, one question on pricing. We definitely want to work with customers on the smaller to larger scales, depending on the type of authoring that you're doing, and particularly how big the audience is that you're distributing to. So the amount of readers that you're actually consuming content versus the amount of authors is how our pricing is typically structured. But like I said, yeah, contact our sales team after this, and we can definitely talk to you and see what your scope is. Another person asked, how do you add physical or in-person? How do you add a physical in-person demo or review? So if you wanted to add in like a video of somebody doing a demo or interactive capabilities from another tool, we actually often use a product called Storylane. You want to take those kind of interactive elements from Storylane and embed them into the experience that you're seeing in EchoInk. You can certainly do that as well. So we just basically create an iframe and put in whatever other tool creates whatever simulation technology or whatever you want to show in that content. So it's just like a website. You're just popping in, other different various technologies that you might want to showcase within the content. All right, I think we're out of time. Liz, you're up and probably kicking me off stage here, huh?
I am, but is there anything else you'd like to leave with the audience today before we wrap it up and say our goodbyes?
I think we're good. I mean, I would just probably leave you all with one last dad joke, just because I can. If today's webinar went well, we're going to call it well authored. If it didn't, then we'll just call it an early draft.
I can't.
That's the way to kick off a Monday.
Great job, Blake.
I think somebody in the chat said, please don't quit your day job. So
That's what my wife says too. So I am here at Echo to stay because my comedic career is not quite ready yet.
Thank
But I'm
you,
trying.
Devin. I appreciate it. This was a great demo, and I see somebody already set up additional time. Please reach out to the Echo 360 team if you have any questions. I know there were a couple that we didn't address, so they'll definitely reach out. But thank you so much, gentlemen. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes, and so for everyone else, I do just want to give a huge shout out to all of our dynamic speakers and sponsors, Camtasia, Echo 360, and ELB. So all of our sessions do pre-qualify for credit hour by SHRM, HRCI, ISPI, and CPTM. So if you need those codes, please send an email to me. It is not automatic, so I will drop my email in the chat for those codes. If it's for CPTM, good news, within your tracker, you just have to plug in this event and you are all good to go. So if you have any issues with that, please also reach out and we will send you to the CPTM team to make sure you get that all covered. And additionally, the Training Industry Strategy Summit. So TICE just wrapped up this month. So now we are on to our Strategy Summit, which offers 3 days of intensive learning and collaborations. You leave equipped with tools, frameworks, and insights to lead an L&D strategy with confidence. So right now we do have early bird all the way till the end of July, so check it out there. Our June sale, June is almost over, everybody, so save 10% on any course with the code DEVELOP10. That includes that CPTM program I just mentioned, so you can strengthen skills and strategic planning, AI essentials, and leadership development, and more. So you do have to secure that before June 30th, which is tomorrow, so check it out there. Lastly, that survey should have popped open in another tab in your browser, and we would greatly welcome your feedback on anything you would like to share from today's event. Thank you again for all joining us. Until next time, I am Liz. I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and I will see you all very soon. Bye, everybody.